Thank you, Madam President. I believe a few facts would be in order. First of all, I heard that property taxes went up last year an extraordinary amount because of the market value homestead credit. Well, let's just listen to the facts. The county levies 0.4%, cities 0.9%, townships 3.3%, schools 1.8%, special taxing 0.5%, none of which were under the control of the legislature, I might add. Overall, state levy increase was just 1.2% or $96 million. The increase for final property taxes went up 4.7% statewide, $370 million. That's the cumulative for all that I just mentioned, 4.7%. But the statewide average for 10 years, 6.26%. And in pay 2008, the last year we funded fully LGA, county program aid, and the market value homestead credit, guess what? That year, property taxes went up across the state of Minnesota by 7.8%. Now, I wouldn't say it was ideal, but we've done a really good job of holding down property taxes. And for those in this chamber that are really concerned about that, the property tax refund program is available now for anybody who had a spike in their property tax increase, in an increase. So we've answered that, members, and that's another reason why, if people are complaining about that, they should be voting yes on this bill. Number two, this bill would include $51 million in property tax relief, as I said, in 2012 and 2013. So it provides that urgently needed relief up front. But the governor agreed with that number. He agreed that we should be looking at that $106 million that we have from our April economic update that shows that we are $106 million ahead in our projected forecast for November. He also agreed that we could use some of the UCARE money and some of the Department of Revenue money. So we're talking about perhaps as much as $27 million from the reserves. But again, that's drawn against $106 million where we are ahead in our forecast. And he was in agreement to that, members. And when we talked, he said we should minimize the tails. And so, members, that's exactly what we did. Our original offer had $190 million in tails. We brought that back down to $140 million in tails. That's the increase for 2014-15. But let me ask you a rhetorical question. Is there any way you can make permanent tax relief or policy changes without them continuing for more than 1 year? How is any business going to believe that there's any consistency in our tax policy if the promise of change is only open for 1 year? You got 1 year to take advantage of this program, and if you don't, you lose out, and by the way, it's gone next year. Do you think you're going to be a big investor in the state of Minnesota relying on those tax policy changes if the commitment is only for 1 year? Members, we have to compete nationally for new businesses. And if we hold that promise out for 1 year, there isn't one accountant that is going to advise a new business from outside of the state of Minnesota to rely on that empty promise. We need to provide relief. It's going to have some tails in order for it to have some success in generating new business and competing for new business nationally. And let me just mention a response to the government expansion math that I heard. I call it government expansion math. I don't know how. I have tried to figure out how somebody says that if we freeze the state general levy, somehow the state's going to come up with a shortfall of $2.2 billion. Maybe 2.7. I can't even remember how much they're exaggerating that number to at this point. But the facts are important here. If we freeze the state general levy at $817 million, by 2022, the impact will be the total taxes would be $1.026 billion, or $200 million in difference. It's only if you add it all up cumulatively that you get any kind of crazy number in the 2 billions. So let's talk about facts when we vote on this bill. Members, I've said Minnesotans have asked for your help. They've asked in a sense of urgency because of the economic recession. They are struggling. Minnesota families and Minnesota businesses are struggling. And we not only need to help them, we need to set up a plan to encourage growth and encourage new businesses to the state of Minnesota. So members, I urge you to vote yes. But if you do think that you should vote no, and there are no maybes, we all know that, then you are voting against a program to hire veterans. You are voting against homeowner property tax relief for those that are struggling with property taxes. You're voting against small business owners across the entire state that are either making money or losing it. They're C corporations, S corporations, individuals. They're the gas station owners, the tavern owners. They're the dry cleaners, the coffee shop owners, the startup software companies. They're the big companies, they're the hardware stores. They all pay those state general levy property taxes, and they've grown significantly. If you vote no, you're voting against tens of thousands of new jobs for the state of Minnesota. You're voting against economic development projects in 39 cities. You're voting against tax credits that will make Minnesota more competitive nationally and will draw new businesses here. Members, I ask you, are you helping or are you ignoring all of those Minnesotans that have asked us for help here in St. Paul? I sure hope you vote to help and provide some relief that Minnesotans are counting on us to provide.
All those senators having voted who desire to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 41 ayes and 25 nays, the bill is passed in its title agreed to.